Welcome to the Stoic Salon podcast, where we talk about life, love, work, play, the universe, and a bit of Stoicism. Today I'm going to speak with Alkistis Agio, and I met Alkistis at the STOICON conference in Athens in 2019. She organised the conference. It was the first time that Stoic philosophers had gathered together in a big group in Athens, for 2,000 years. So that was pretty exciting. And Alkistis is very, very interesting. She comes from a banking background, but has since, transitioned into psychotherapy. She has a doctorate in philosophy, and she's specialized in transpersonal psychology. And she has such a wide-ranging and interesting approach. And Stoicism, of course, underpins everything. But also she's influenced by ancient practice and ancient wisdom in the broader sense. She works with CEOs and really highly successful corporate professionals. She's worked with large companies and trained professionals all over the world, and she's very active on social media. She also leads some very lovely meditations online. So she leads you through both Stoic and, broader meditations, and the key for her, I think, is to tap into ways to beat stress and anxiety, which is just the fundamental obstacle of anyone in a highly performative, highly demanding professional role. She does a whole lot of volunteer work as well. She's really quite an amazing woman, and I was so happy to meet her 2 years ago now. And I look forward to having a chat with her on the podcast right now. So let's get to it. And welcome, Alkistis, to the Stoic Salon podcast.
Welcome. Thank you.
I guess I'm going to sort of jump around a bit and ask you, first of all, what your path was to Stoicism. And then as you're telling us about that, you can weave in aspects of your life, biographical stuff that you want to promote, and we'll kind of jump around a bit and see how we go. So I'm really curious about life before Stoicism. I'm really curious about, what was life like before Stoicism, and what led you to the point of meeting Stoicism? How did that happen? And what happened? Was it an instant attraction? Was it instant intuitive curiosity? Yeah. Tell me about your path.
I both have a Greek heritage, Hellenic heritage. And I was actually very lucky because my father was a Stoic, and he read Stoic books. And he read all the Greek philosophers. I grew up with a big library, my father's library, and we would always be discussing philosophy and the mottos. I was kind of brought up on Stoicism in an odd way. It's kind of unique.
Wow. And so are you talking from like a young age, like teens?
They started, of course, I started, where most kids were having Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. I was brought up on the Greek myths, which is already the beginning of Greek mythology, the Greek philosophy. Okay, Homer, ever since Homer, you start seeing the rise of these 4 cardinal virtues, the messages of Greek philosophy. They come in, arete, courage, wisdom, temperance, all of that you see even in the myths, and the dangers, in the myths you see the danger of not having balance, of having too much ego and hubris. And So I was brought up with the Greek myths. And then as I became a teenager, slowly my father gave me Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and we would just discuss it in this beautiful library that he had. Even from 16, he offered me a bit of cognac, and we would just sit in the drawing room and, talk about things, but also practically he taught me, like, he self-discipline was very important for my father, waking up early. I'm not going to say cold shower, but it's like my sister and I were brought up on sort of Stoic, disciplines, if you like, the Stoic way of thinking, not to be consumerist, not to be materialist, to be independent of popular beliefs. My father would always have us question, like, why are you doing what all your friends are doing? You don't have to buy that designer label. Why everyone's wearing Lacoste or whatever. Everyone's wearing Jordache jeans or whatever. Why do you want to buy Jordache? Why aren't you, paid to wear the label? You're wearing someone else's. He just didn't have us go with the flow of popular culture. And, part of me didn't like it. I was like, I wanted to be like everybody else. But slowly over the years, I began to realize I am stronger than a lot of other people. I'm inwardly resilient. And I felt that I knew that had to do with my father, the way that we were brought up.
Alkistis, I really just love the idea of your dad's sort of cognac symposium, in a way.
He would prompt me with questions. He was like, why do you think that? If you think that, why do you think that? And he always encouraged me not to go with the popular culture, to obviously fit in to some degree, but not like a sheep. That was one thing I recall from my father, especially with consumerism. He's like, your happiness doesn't, one bicycle will do. I still have my, my teddy bear. I didn't have Barbie dolls. I had my teddy bear. I had, one or two dolls. My other friends in Canada where I grew up was like, like 50 Barbie dolls, they all had. So it was against being a consumer. It was against thinking like other people. It was about being self-sufficient. It was about waking up early, doing chores. Even if we lived in a kind of wealthy suburbia, we had to mow the lawn with my sister. We had to shovel the snow. We had to get part-time jobs. He wanted to make us like resilient, and that combined with the Stoicism made a mindset, that I still think has lasted till today,
There's a story in Zeno, I think it's in Lives of the Philosophers, etc. And he was sort of asked to carry lentils publicly. Mm-hmm. Have you heard that story?
Yeah.
And the idea was to kind of deal with his feeling of social kind of, embarrassment and stuff like that. Did you ever feel like as a kid that some of these, like mowing the lawn and doing all those tasks, did you ever feel socially awkward that you were asked to do them? Like Zeno initially felt when he was carrying lentils?
I just, as I said, I kind of grew up in a well-to-do suburbia, and the other kids, they got more money than I did. They were kind of spoiled, let's put it that way. They were spoiled suburban kids, and my father didn't want us to be like that. So he tried in every way to make us do the chores and speak the truth. He was really bad. Like if we ever lied, this was like really, I remember when I was in kindergarten, I pickpocketed a little. I was like, oh, what's in this? Because there were little surprises in people's pockets. How kids are. They're like, oh, that's in it. And, I brought a little watch home, and he was like, you have to bring that back tomorrow. Say you're sorry, admit that you did it. It's like, I'll remember that forever. He didn't want any, because, the father, he could have said, okay, well, we'll keep it, or, hide it a little. but he was like, you have to face what you just did, you know. He was like, I don't know, I think it had to do also that he had gone through difficulties. He had been, from 14 years old, he was in the resistance against the Germans. At 14 years old, he grew up in a little village in the Spartan Hills. It's from a Spartan, tribe, his village. And so we know this because they are descendants of the Spartans. They speak a dialect that is laconic. So he grew up in a small village. Then the Germans invaded at 14. He was living in the caves and fighting Germans at 14. He had a very hard life. And then he became later an immigrant to Canada. And for him, like, all the difficulties had occurred. And so I think he was just trying to instill that look, you're comfortable now, but, at any moment things can turn. Not with fear. He didn't want to instill fear. He wanted us to be self-disciplined and, as I said, not too dependent on external things.
And also this idea of kind of premeditating anything that might go wrong or change, etc., which is kind of a Stoic.
It's all about saving money. Don't spend everything you have. It was all about prudence. Courage. Courage, I learned more from him because he was a very courageous man, going off and fighting the Germans, the Nazis. He was a courageous man. So I think some of that just passed on. And it's very useful today. My sister and I talk about it, and we're like, thank God Dad was, because we see people in depression and this, and then we were like, I think we're doing very well, touch wood. And I think, with the Stoic philosophy integrated into that, we just basically count our blessings every day, and try not to complain.
Did your dad like explicitly refer to the Stoics, or was it just embedded in?
No, it was definitely, because he was also non-religious, okay? He was not like a typical Greek Orthodox family. Okay, we went to the Easter, we went to Christmas Mass. Of course, we were part of the Greek community in Canada, for yourself being Greek Australian. But there was the sense of you have to rely on yourself. It wasn't about relying on God or some external it was very realism, become a realist. That was his message. Be a realist. Don't kid yourself. Don't kid others. Be really firmly rooted in your truth. And he definitely referred to, he was a very intellectual man. He referred to, this is what Socrates taught. This is what Aristotle taught. Zeno, Marcus Aurelius. He was very well read. He just happened to be like that, So
I'm curious about whether the Stoic mindset and Stoic teachings is kind of integral to the Greek mindset, because I was talking to Robert, who runs the Scotland Stoic group on Facebook, and he also has a podcast, the Scotland Stoics podcast. And I'm living in Scotland now, and I just noted, I don't know, some sort of mindset in Scotland that is very Stoic. And the Stoics and the Scottish, during the Enlightenment, they really embraced Stoicism, and they did translations.
They were Philhellenes.
Yeah, totally. And I think the Scottish have a real common sense-ness about them,
That's true. Yeah.
And I was talking to Robert about that, and we kind of had this little theory that, the Scottish are very Stoic by nature. And I was wondering, do you think the Greeks are kind of like that? Because I think I grew up with like the Greek tragedians and drama and dancing and all of that. And so I see the Greeks as very, the standard stereotype, being chaotic and being this and being that. And it's as if Stoicism is almost, an opposite or a parallel perspective. But the way you present it is that it's actually really part of your Greek upbringing.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I have to say that Greece as a whole has been through many difficulties, tragedies, invasions. So I think Greeks by default are very resilient. But I don't know, like, I can't say for how other people were brought up, other Greeks. I don't think it was very common. I think a lot of Greek children grew up with the Greek myths, but I don't think they were taught philosophy like I was. That I have to say, I think it was a little different in my case.
Yeah.
I think most Greeks are brought up with Greek Orthodox Church being the center of their life. My parents were different in that, both of them. So, and I'm not, comparing. I'm just saying that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
So I was just drawn to Stoicism naturally. I embraced it. I was always reading philosophy myself. Just became a part of my life. The only part where my father didn't support me was when I wanted to study philosophy and become a philosopher. There he put down the realist and he said, no, you have to get a job and get well paid and something. That's where we didn't meet very well there, because he's like, you can always read philosophy, get a good job, work in a bank. And I did. I studied banking and finance, my first degrees. I worked in corporate finance. He wanted me to be, again, in a way, just like realist, Later on in life, I found the way back to my truth and philosophy and psychology. I went back to university, did the master's, did the PhD, and finally found my root again. But because I say that in my book, From Fear to Freedom, in the beginning, I say about my story, how we had this very big argument with my father, a big fight. And I just left my banking job. I left everything. And I went on a 10-year trekking and jobbing around the world by myself without any of his help or money or anything like that. So, but he was always with me. I mean, it's just like, father-daughter relationships. It's complicated. On the one hand, they empower you. On the other hand, it's conditional. That, you, in my case, he wanted me to be someone that I didn't necessarily want to be.
So on that journey, what were you looking for? What were you searching for?
Well, I was really looking for myself. When I left the banking job, this safe, secure job, everyone was shocked. They were like, how could you leave such a job? You're on the fast track. You're very well paid. You have a big office. It was very prestigious. And I said, but I didn't find satisfaction in this job. It was just not me. I just felt like a fish out of water. And I wasn't sure what I wanted, but I knew I had to find it. So I left. I took up the courage to leave. And I just said, I'm going to go find myself, basically. It's a little like Eat, Pray, Love, only a lot more dramatic. I looked at Eat, Pray, Love, and I was kind of laughing. I was like, boy, that was a really easy journey she had there. My journey, my life was so in danger. I traveled through Turkey by myself. I didn't have any money. I met a group of Italians. I hitchhiked back to Italy with them. I got a job as a waitress. I mean, I got no help, and I didn't have any bank account to keep me comfortable. So, but I slowly discovered what it was I wanted to do. I started training people in English, teaching English to business people. And then I slowly got into training, seminars, leadership development. And I said, this is me. This is what I like. I love leadership development. So, and then it's the philosophy of Stoicism goes very well with that, because leadership development, it's all about self-leadership.
When you started When you started doing your leadership training, how did you know that Stoicism would be the kind of key to helping leaders lead, or as you say on your website, really you're addressing issues of stress and anxiety in the professions? Yeah.
Well, Stoicism, it's the most practical of all of the Greek philosophy, as you know very well. Like it's the most, it's like CBT in many ways, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a very hands-on, it's not an abstract philosophizing. It's like as Cicero said about Socrates. Socrates brought down philosophy from the heavens to the earth. So after Socrates, the whole philosophy became more like psychotherapy and self-inquiry and self-leadership rather than who am I and why am I here and is there a God? The Stoics left that a little, like that part that I like anyway. It's the self-leadership part. It's the beginning of leadership. How can you, as Socrates would say, how can you lead others if you can't lead yourself? So that really resonated with me, how I was brought up, with my values, and I said that's what I want to teach people: self-leadership.
So how do you do that? How do you teach that?
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, I've created my own method which integrates Stoicism with Socrates, with Aristotle. Like I would like to say that my method is Stoicism 2.0. I kind of like advanced Stoicism in a way, because it's for people who want to go more, because Stoics, if you like, it's the philosophy is not the source. The source is Socrates. The source is before Stoicism. So if someone likes Stoicism, I encourage them to go to the source, which is Socrates, which is everything that came before Stoicism. So my system is a very simple 3-step self-inquiry method. You basically filter your thoughts. And especially the aggravating thoughts, the anxious thoughts, the fear-based thoughts. You stop yourself in cold blood and you're like, wait a minute, is what I'm thinking, is it true? That's the first question you ask yourself. Is it true, or am I lying to myself? Okay? That's the question related to ethos. The second question is it kind? Is that a kind thing that I just thought about myself, to myself? Is that a kind thing that I'm thinking about the other person? Am I limiting them? Am I putting them under a label? No, it's not very kind. Is it useful to think this thought? No, it's not really useful. It's a self-sabotaging thought. So how can I convert that original thought or belief? So it's a simple 3-step method, but there's a lot beneath that. So the book that I've made is like a workbook. It has a theory and a practice. But the Stoicism is like part of your everyday, where you reflect on a Stoic quote every day. The Stoics essentially repackaged the original Pythagorean thinking of self-reflection, the Platonic thought of the view from above. I would like more Stoics to look at the Greek origins of Stoicism. For me, it's become a little too Roman.
Yeah, let's reclaim it.
I think
I like that.
You need to go to the source. And I think my book, From Fear to Freedom, helps people go deeper, even deeper. Or just, widen their knowledge of Stoicism.
With your work with leadership, and I know that now you've transitioned and you do much more interest, like in different things like meditation and all that sort of stuff. So we'll get to that. But I'm curious, in the leadership area, were professionals of that sort kind of resistant to your method? Like, was there any resistance, and if so, what?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you something. It was challenging for me because most of my leadership training I did in the Emirates, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Qatar.
Mhm.
And well, you had the initial challenge of, okay, what's this woman doing in the middle of the desert with 50 engineers to do leadership training? I was like, what am I doing here? It's so surreal. But, I think
I love that.
it was like a surreal thing. Aristotle to the Arabs. Okay, this is going to be fun. But I think, like back to the self-leadership, self-confidence, self-esteem. I knew what ground I was standing on. I was standing on the shoulders of giants. Socrates, Aristotle, Zeno, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. So I knew what I was doing. I had no uncertainty. I said, you guys need this stuff and you're going to get it one way or another. When I was like hired as a trainer, obviously I wasn't, so they felt that. They felt my certainty. It was transmitted. I'm here to do business, guys. I'm telling you, it's a room full of 50 engineers that I had to train, in self-leadership on a regular basis in the middle of the desert, right? So I think they felt my certainty. They're like, she means business. Let's get down to business. She's not kidding around here. So I think, people will reflect who you are. And I wasn't going to let anyone's, thing intimidate me.
It's kind of your method's a bit of what we call today reframing. Would you call it that? Yeah.
Reframing is part of it. Is an important part. Reframing, yeah, I think that's the first one. The is it true? It's more like judging yourself. Like, is that thought true? The reframing part goes in the second. I agree. In the second part, where the pathos comes in, the is it kind? Reframing, that's where you enter the other person's perspective. You see the whole situation with more kindness, the view from above, that reframing. Yeah, from that point of view. Yeah. So
can you explain the view from above? Because I sort of ask everyone, and everyone's got an interesting, everyone's got a unique approach to the view from above.
That's good.
So how do you do, what's your view from above? What's your practice?
Really, I just, I think I raise myself kind of mentally above the stratosphere, like looking at Earth from above. I'm like the astronaut's view of Earth. These beautiful pictures they have of the Earth. And you're just like an astronaut. You're standing around on the moon or closer. And the point is to see the globe. Once you see the globe, you realize that we are on this spaceship. We are all in it together. Whether you're black or white, male, female, we are the human race here. So that's how far I pull that. Google Earth,
Yeah.
Google Earth. I love that. I often watch that video, pulling away. So I want the perspective of the Earth so I can get over my little ego, get over myself, get over my little drama, whatever I'm experiencing.
Because you see yourself as just this tiny person like everyone else, right?
I think, yeah. My deep intention is to be as good a human being as I can. Okay, through my thoughts, through my actions. So everything I do, I also think you're affecting other people too. So you have to be doubly conscious for yourself, but also for the example you're giving as a woman, as a mentor, and as a human being. So yeah, I have this thing of the like Socrates. They asked him, "Are you an Athenian? Are you a Corinthian?" He said, "I am neither. I am a citizen of the world. I am a cosmopolitan, a citizen of the earth." That's very linked to ikiosis, the Stoic concept of earth stewardship. So this pulling away from me is about seeing the earth and seeing how can I contribute. Really, I mean, and I don't do it. Let me again refer to Socrates. I don't do it so that other people will say, "Oh, she's such a good person." Socrates says that you do good things for your own happiness. So I'm doing it for me. I'm not like pretending to be an altruist or anything. I'm doing it for my conscience to be as good as I can. So I always have this. It's Alkistis in society, but it's Alkistis like also looking at it from above, really from above.
That distancing technique is really, really helpful. But you know what? I just thought of something. The first time I ever came across the concept of the view from above was not from Pythagoras or from like Epictetus or anyone, but from, and can you help me if I'm getting this right, a Greek song. Was there a Greek singer called Kostas Hatzis?
Hadzianis, maybe?
No. The Greek gypsy guitarist.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know that. I don't know.
And he has this song, and in the song he talks about, seeing the world from above and that everyone looks like little ants. And I remember being like, I don't know, a teenager listening to my dad's records and just listening to the lyrics of this song and imagining myself with this tune, this gypsy Greek singing it on his like guitar, being looking at the world from above and just being like a little ant. And that really, really threw me as a teenager. Like it really, really made me feel that, wow, I'm such a tiny human being like everyone else.
Yeah, you're not the center of the universe. I mean,
yeah.
For me, the view from above has more to do with compassion. It ignites compassion.
Yeah.
That's how Plato meant it. He says, if you see this thing from above, you'll see that we're just human beings on earth, all of us struggling, and we're all carrying some burden. So when you're upset with someone, know that he too or she too has some trauma that you cannot fathom. So treat everybody kindly, with respect. So that's the view from above. That's what the view from above does for me. It's like, how can I be more kind to myself, to the others? Let's humanize this situation. Let's find our commonalities. That's what that does. And it's very appeasing. It really helps to diffuse tension.
Yeah.
Between myself and whoever I might have some ego conflict,
It releases the pressure of having to be so important in your life. And I think in terms of this practice, I'm really interested in how various people do this practice. Another, which is not so accessible, but being in an aeroplane and looking down. I always used to love flying into Athens and just seeing all the little white kind of buildings and just seeing that. And then a few years ago, maybe about 2 years ago, I was in Shanghai. And I was in a taxi just going from, I think, the airport to the city or something anyway, and just whizzing past in a taxi and whizzing past hundreds of really massive apartment buildings. Like, I think each apartment building must have had thousands of like apartments because, Shanghai is just massive. Yeah. And just going past apartment building after apartment building. And that was kind of a horizontal view from above, but it was just so powerful just seeing all these little boxes just whizzing past me and just thinking, yeah, there's billions of people there and we're all in our little apartments, all with our little dramas, but all united and all the same. I just think that's a good practice. Do you regularly consciously, intentionally do this practice? Because I think I can't remember last time I did it.
Absolutely. I mean, as you know, I create guided meditations, and that's where I insert this concept, because I started out making the guided meditations for myself as a kind of, because I couldn't concentrate, meditate on just nothing. So I thought, okay, let's give yourself a guided step-by-step relaxation, the whole body, and then do a visualization. So in the visualization, I would include, now rise, visualize your body lying on the bed, visualize yourself above the building and moving further and further into space, viewing yourself. So I would include this practice in the guided meditation. I include it in my guided meditations. So it's a theme that comes up. Another one that comes up in the guided meditations is, which I'll probably be doing at STOICON, the women's STOICON that's coming up, all in. That the other visualization is one of my favorite ones, which is also, again, pulling away. It's where you visit an island, like a paradise island, something like a Greek island. And on this island, it's a place of learning. There's a temple of learning. And I visit this temple regularly. Like, what you do is, in the visualization, you swim to the island. Then at the island, you remove your earthly clothes. You wear a robe. You go into the temple, and you receive a Stoic message for the day. You receive some Stoic lesson. So in a way, I've created a world where I can escape my everyday mundane reality and go to this island of learning and Sophia, and then I can return to my life refreshed, as if I've been on. You know how it is when you come back from a holiday, you just see everything a little, lighter. You see the bigger picture, and you just, this has always been important for me. This ability to pull away from myself, look at things from outside, objectively, and reframe situation. It's very liberating. It's one path to liberation, this whole thing. But that's what Buddhism is all about too. I studied, yoga and Buddhism too, lived in the ashram for a while. And all they did was tell you, detach, learn detachment, learn objectivity, learn to pull away. You're not your body. So all great wisdoms come to this, where you pull away from your own drama, basically. That's the idea.
I love that, pulling away from your own drama. I love that. I'm glad that you brought up the Buddhists, and of course we're talking about the Stoics, because at STOICON X Women, both you and Ranjini George, who teaches at University of Toronto, who you must know. Have you met Ranjini George? Okay. She was at STOICON. She visited STOICON X in Athens, and that's where I got to meet her. And so she teaches both Stoicism and...
is this Indian Canadian?
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah. She's amazing. Okay. And so at the conference, she'll be talking about Buddhism and Stoicism, and then you're kind of linking the two as well with your meditation session. Now, why did I bring that up? I wanted to ask you, so this idea of detachment, yes, it comes up in both Buddhist tradition, and so Eastern and Western, like the Stoics, but they do it differently. So what's your comment on the difference? I know that I was listening to Bill Irvin.
Experienced it. So like, I can talk from how I learned, as I said, in an ashram under a guru, like it was Hinduism with yoga, this kind of thing. And Buddhism, it was like, just all of that together. So the Eastern way. The Eastern way has more mysticism in it. There's the whole mystical quality, which is in a way opposite to the Stoics. Stoics and the Greeks are like, I think it was that the Greeks never conceived of zero or the negative numbers. They couldn't conceive of what was not there. They were like, what's here? This is the real world. This is Stoicism was a move from mysticism. Okay. And that's one of the reasons they put Socrates to death, because Socrates was one of the people who questioned the older religion, the way, the status quo of the mythical Greece, the mythos Greece. Greek philosophy from the classics on especially was about the scientific method, questioning, testing to find the truth. Not to say we know the truth, but always to be open to more truth. but tested, proven. That's why they say the Western civilization started in Greece, because it was the beginning of the scientific method. You know, it was all about finding the objective truth. So there's a difference, I would say, with it.
So when you do yoga and then you do Stoic, informed meditation.
I like the yoga practices for well-being. At the same time, I have to say I've started to integrate something that is of Greek origin, because I'm promoting this thing called Hellenic wellness. So it's like the Greek approach to wellness. I don't understand why people come to Greece and they do Buddhist seminars. When you come to Greece, you should be learning about Socrates and Plato and Stoicism, seminars on Stoicism. So I wanted to see what was the Greek way of health and well-being. So one of the ways that we have a Greek yoga, it's called calisthenics. Calisthenics. Right. Kalos means beauty, and stenos is, a good feeling for your soul. So it makes you look good and feel good. Calisthenics is exercises you do on a mat. You've done it. All of us do calisthenics in our gym. It's what we grew up with in our schools. In elementary school, we were taught calisthenics.
Are you going to get us to do this at the women's conference?
No, I'm just doing the meditation. But, I'm trying to now create some deals with spas here and resorts in Greece to apply the holistic approach of Greek wellness. So that's Greek philosophy, calisthenics, Greek nutrition, like Hippocratic or Mediterranean diet, and Greek music and its effect on the soul for healing, and ekeosis, sustainability, and earth stewardship. It has 7 pillars anyway. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but Greece has a rich heritage of body, mind, and spirit, and it's something that is coming to life again. I believe that I'm one of the people bringing it to life, and STOICON is a big part of that too, because we brought STOICON to Greece. That's a breakthrough.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
So, I find your approach really interesting because it's very ecumenical, right? It's really broad, and you're quite confident and enthusiastic about bringing in, the Socrates, etc. So the pre-Stoics.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I heard someone called Socrates a pre-Stoic, which is interesting. I've never heard that being said before, but
it's the opposite. It's Stoicism is post-Socrates, actually.
Post-Socrates. yeah. Post-Socratics. Yeah.
It was there. I mean, you see a lot of Stoics. They study Pythagoreanism. They study the Delphic motto.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot more than.
Yeah.
They have. I encourage the return to the source.
I think that's really nice and refreshing. I was talking to Sharon LaBelle, and I'm going to speak to her next week. And no, it wasn't. I was watching a video where she says, I don't call myself a Stoic. I'm not into isms. She's really just into living a good life, wisdom, virtue, being the best person that she can be. And I think that's really... I kind of feel that the Stoics were a bit like that. They didn't really call themselves Stoics. They just called themselves, philosophers, right?
Lovers of wisdom.
Lovers of wisdom.
And they welcomed other schools. They're like...
Even Epicurus, some of them.
There were very many commonalities with Epicurus.
And I feel that today, isn't there sometimes... I don't know where I'm going with this, but I feel that you need to get Stoicism right. It's either right or wrong. And you have to be a certain way in order to...
Yeah, it's a little restricting sometimes.
Something's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little restricting. I think it's... but that's not the fault of anyone like Massimo Pilucci or Donald or, that's no one's fault. It's just... And I think that's why Stoicon women is so important, to give, like, it's going to be a huge enrichment how we're going to contribute to Stoicism now, because it's been a little male dominated. Okay. And that's no one's fault. It's just, men naturally gravitated to philosophy. And in the past, women naturally gravitated a lot to metaphysics. I don't think I've ever, at least, in my, it has often occurred to come to me in circles with women, like, okay, what zodiac sign are you? Like, it was always a little metaphysical with the women. And the men were the one who did the serious philosophy thinking. Right. But now, more modern women who are a little more masculine, if you like, confident, I don't know what you want to call it. They've gone out of the just the women talk. They're going into bigger ideas, I think. They're joining the men in the philosophy. This is us. Okay, we are in a way pioneers of bringing women into philosophy. There's just not enough of them. It's still a very male-dominated thing. You look at a woman, a beautiful woman like you, or and you're like, she's a philosopher. Well, yeah, she's a philosopher, because people have this idea that they're these old white men with beards, and it's not like that anymore. We're giving a new image to what is a Stoic.
And also, I think what I really like about this conference, and I really hope that, I think we're going to have a great time, but also I think the vibe is different, and even our conversation is different. It's more celebratory. It's more kind of joyful. Everyone, and it was quite interesting, like putting out the invitation to people, to women and men, to women, to come back with sort of topics. I mean, we've got a creativity panel, Stoicism and creativity, which I don't know if there's been a panel like that. I don't think there ever.
In a feminine energy, and let's celebrate, feminine wisdom. This is what we're doing. And let's remember that Socrates was taught by Diotima.
Diotima, yes.
He was initiated by Diotima, who now there's a lot of speculation that it was actually
Aspasia. Yeah.
I believe that theory, because in these circles there were a lot of pseudonyms. You would be given a name, a pseudonym, like a you'd be given like a little, not a pseudonym, a nickname. So Aspasia was probably Diotima. I'm not a researcher, but I've just read a recent article. Donald Robertson sent it to me.
Yeah.
That where the speculation that Aspasia was Diotima. Anyway, to make a long story short, women were always initiating men into a philosophy. Well, unfortunately, it was behind the scenes, and we were not really given. It was always behind the scenes. Behind every great woman, there's a great.
Behind every great Socrates, there's a great Diotima.
Women have been mentors, and your mother is your first philosophy teacher. She teaches you about love.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She teaches you about what's right and what's wrong, what is virtuous and what is not virtuous. And so women have to kind of reclaim, and are reclaiming, I'm happy to say, their position in philosophy, but now with also social acknowledgement, not behind the scenes. Starting with Martha Nussbaum and such, outspoken academics and popular philosophers like us.
Popular. A quick diversion back to Diotima. Do you know Ed Spence? He's a philosopher originally from Cyprus. So Zeno is his big hero, of course, because he was born in the land of Zeno. He taught philosophy in Australia at Charles Sturt University, and is also in the Netherlands, I don't know, some other institution there. Anyway, he writes philosophy plays.
What does he do? He talks a lot about Diotima?
Well, he writes plays on the Socratic dialogues. He kind of, adapts them. And years ago, when I was back in Sydney, we used to meet at a Greek tavern, the Steki Taverna, which was like 10 minutes away from the University of Sydney, and perform. We used to call them symposium nights, and we'd perform these dialogues. There'd be like Retsina and Mesedes, and then we'd do philosophy. Anyway, this year for the Greek Festival of Sydney, he's doing another Socratic dialogue in which the Otima appears, and I'm going to be playing the Otima on Zoom. Like, I'm going to Zoom into Sydney, so it's going to be fantastic.
Oh, that's wow. I'd love to see a video of that.
Definitely. Yeah, I'll let you know. That's going to be great.
Wow, it's great. Yeah.
Okay, speaking of women, I've just been reading Ryan Holiday's Lives of the Stoics. Have you dipped into it at all? And so there's about 20 chapters of all the Stoics along, over the years. And there's one woman in there, and that's Portia.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking, Portia, right? So her story is that she was trying to gain Brutus's trust, her second husband's trust, because she wanted to know what he was up to, the assassination plot. And so he was reluctant to tell her because, she might get arrested and get tortured and spill the beans. So she cuts into her thighs to prove that she can withstand torture and
stabs herself.
Stabs herself.
Wow.
And then at the end of it all, she commits suicide, supposedly. And I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Portia?
It's a little sad that that's one of the few examples. That's what I'm saying. I believe that there were a lot more women who were into Stoics. It's just that you don't hear them. They were just like, they were, in a way, they were either courtesans, educated aristocrat women who didn't bother to get married, but because they wanted to be in the symposiums, in these conferences, if you like, of the day. There were a lot. I just don't think they're well known because
and to be fair, Ryan Holiday blames Plutarch for not writing about the women. So
I think it was just like a no-brainer for them. They didn't bother writing much about the women. It's not that they weren't dynamic women, but in the end of the day, they just gave the credit to the guy. I think that this giving credit to the woman came much, much later. Like Madame Curie, how she helped her husband find this thing. In olden days, they wouldn't mention her. They just give the husband's name. Okay, she was his assistant. But slowly, with women's liberation, it started becoming mentioned, like in our own right, to be the scientist, to be the philosopher, the academic. So it's more like history belongs to those who are writing it, and most of them were male writers. So they just wrote about the males. I don't think they did it on purpose, like to suppress the women. They just consider it worthy, So we're shifting the way we see things now. That's for sure. We are. Our times more than ever before is women are just standing up and naming it and claiming it, and that's fine. That's good.
And there are so many interesting women's voices today, both in Stoicism and just generally. But back to the men, I wanted to ask you, who's your favorite Stoic philosopher or Stoic?
Ancient or modern?
Let's go ancient and then modern.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll tell you something. Although I understand that Marcus Aurelius went through many grave difficulties, and it's not easy being emperor of the world, by no means, and I admire him, and I realized, what a wise leader he was, the philosopher king. I have a soft spot, really for Epictetus, because he was a slave who liberated and found and transformed his life, founded a school. Like, that must have been a lot more difficult. I think people like, I have, maybe it's like, I just think he proves that Stoicism is not for the aristocracy and the elite. It's really for the everyday person, the coal miner, the waiter, the plumber. It's for everyone. That's for Epictetus, for me, democratizes philosophy through his story. And so I have like this heart in me, because a lot of them were aristocrats. Even Zeno was a ship owner. He just lost all his fortune, but he had grown up as a ship owner.
Yeah.
So he had the education, he had, but Zeno like flourished, got himself out of his predicament, and even being a handicapped almost, and also a slave. He's a story like of real breakthrough for me. So his story touches me. But all the other famous ones are very touching as well.
Yeah.
I have a respect for Seneca's writing. And what about you?
I have to say that even though I lived in Preveza for a while, which is where Nicopolis is, where Epictetus.
Nicopolis. It's
so
great.
I felt quite close to Epictetus then, because I felt like I was walking on his footsteps.
Amazing.
Which is amazing. But the only thing for me was that reading Epictetus, and I only read Seneca like literally in the last year or so I didn't know anything about Seneca. I didn't really get to Seneca. I'd sort of looked at some of the tragedies, but the plays rather, the dramas. But I found the Stoics quite boring, I have to say, because my background's in creative writing, literature, philosophy, and the Stoics, I was never into self-help literature until very recently. So I'd always, if I went into the bookshop, it would be straight to the tragedies or the dramas rather than like the self-help aisles. So I found the Stoics kind of a bit dry, a bit boring, and there was no music and beauty in the writing until I read Marcus Aurelius. And found that, there was a real, and it wasn't, I don't know if you've read the Gregory Hayes translation. And it's not so much the translation itself, but it's Gregory Hayes. He writes a brilliant introduction where he analyzes, and Pierre Hadot does this too, where they both analyze Marcus Aurelius's style, literary style. And they really mention how very intentional the style is and how very unique it is, in the sense that it's a way of reframing and re-expressing the Stoic teachings. And if you look at it that way, like Gregory Hayes in his introduction says that Marcus Aurelius didn't do any original philosophy. Epictetus had done all the hard work, right? Marcus Aurelius literally just rehashes Epictetus, right? And I'm thinking, like, from a creative point of view, Marcus Aurelius took teachings that were already done, and then by rewriting and focusing on word choice and syntax and just the sound of words, because Fronto had taught him how to really focus on language and how to really draw out what's striking about the language. And then in Pierre Hadot's analysis, he says that what Marcus Aurelius is really doing is rewriting so that the images and the words have a real striking effect on him, because we were talking about memorizing the teachings. And so that perspective made me look at Marcus Aurelius and think he's created a creative masterpiece based on...
That's true. Well, if you look at it, from a literary point of view, I just look at the life story. That's what moves me more than this. So I love reading. And as I said, Marcus Aurelius definitely was faced with tremendous challenges. It's like being the emperor with all the responsibilities and ethical dilemmas, and I can't even imagine. But I don't know. I have a soft spot for the underdog. Always.
Yeah, I know. Me too. All right, you win.
No, it's just choice,
But recently,
they're beautiful in many ways. I mean, just love reading. Yeah.
Recently, I've been really, and that via Margaret Graver's translation of Seneca. I am loving Seneca. I think he's an absolute hilarious person. I don't know if you remember one of his letters to Lucilius. He's like, this is my favorite letter. Okay, obviously I haven't read all of them yet, but I don't know if it's letter number 12. Anyway, don't quote me on the number, but it's the letter in which he talks about anger. And he relates a story where he goes back to his childhood home, I think it is, and the house is in a state of disrepair. Like, it's old, it's crumbling, the doors are off their hinges, the gardens, the trees are like just awful. And he gets really angry at the caretaker, and he's blaming the caretaker for being like just letting the house go to ruin. And the caretaker's saying, Seneca, this house is actually very, very old. Like, it's just an old crumbling house. And Seneca's saying, the house is fine. You've just left it, So Seneca's writing to Lucilius and saying, you know what? I just let loose. I got really, really angry. I was so angry. I just took advantage and I got angry. And then that's the first paragraph. And then in the second paragraph, he immediately starts detaching, and he recognizes that, oh, actually, you know what? I wasn't angry about the house getting old. I realized that that was my childhood house. And I realized that if that house is old, I'm old. So I'm actually getting old at me getting angry because I'm getting old. So he's like starting to detach and identify the root of his anger. And then he proceeds to put forward an argument in favor of aging. So he puts his whole philosophical argument in favor of aging. And I just think, wow, you go from like immersion in like the negative emotion, a step backwards, starting identifying what's going on there, like what your method indeed, like, is it true? Is this the reason? And then stepping back again, trying to like just reframe it all that actually growing old is good. I love Seneca. He's just hilarious.
Oh, absolutely. Highly intelligent people.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, that's what we admire, I like all the Stoic texts. It's just a magical feeling to read things. I actually try to read things also in their original Greek or Latin and have like a translation next to it, because I believe like this, the language, the sound of language is also part of the message, the onomatopoeia, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Onomatopoeia. So I feel very blessed. And that's why, we make videos like you and do podcasts and try to share this wisdom with people. It's transformed my life. It's made me meet very wonderful people, because, when you meet the Stoics there at the STOICON, you understand that you're meeting people who are kindred spirits, who have certain values, who are working on themselves. So there's like an automatic French fellowship, an automatic fellowship. And I love that we're like a big family in a way. I feel that with you, with other people that I've met. It's like we're all trying to work through our things, but we all have a similar intention of trying to live with virtue, trying to flourish, trying to do good to others, trying to be ideal citizens. We're working on it. And it's nice. It's a kind of like a whole therapeutic group, but also a cultural group, because it's historical references. I'm very blessed, I feel, with this path of Stoicism, or I would say, as you said, the path of wisdom, choosing wisdom. That's doesn't have to be labeled even.
Yeah, I definitely feel that I've become much more socially intentional, socially, ever since I started sort of getting involved with modern Stoicism. I did my first Stoic week a few years ago, and at that point I was like fully immersed in the community, and then like that was it for me. Yeah.
My husband's been converted.
Oh my goodness! Well, there you go.
Quoting Stoicism to me, and putting me back in my place with Stoicism. It's changed his life too. It's helped him deal with business stress much better, and he watching how it has transformed him too has shown me again how really practical these things can be.
What would be your favorite quote, and what would be your husband's most often used quote?
My favorite quote is Epictetus, the one that it's not what's happening to us that upsets us, but how we're viewing what's happening.
Yeah.
It's not what's happening to us that angers us, but our perspective of it. That's just like reframe of everything. So, what's my husband one? My husband always uses "to thy own self be true," but that's like Shakespeare borrowing from Socrates. But that it's about truth, you know. He always says, "To thy own self be true, Alkistis." It's like, oh, okay, fine. All right, I got to do the thing. Do the right thing.
You've got an Epictetus in your house.
Oh my God, it's funny. Yeah. I feel blessed. How's your husband? Is he into it at all, or is like, okay, let her do her stuff?
Yeah, look, the interesting thing is that I started sending my husband little emails with excerpts from Epictetus, you know. And then I was just copying them out. It was just some archaic translation. And then I thought, actually, because my husband's been like, he had a very, very busy work life. And I thought, he's not going to have time to read this.
Yeah, that's why you need the small.
So then I thought, I'm going to rewrite it in my own words to get his attention, first of all.
Right.
And my husband's really funny because he says to me, because I'm a bit of a rambler, a bit of a storyteller, he's like, Kathryn, can you bullet point it for me? So then I thought, I'll bullet point the Stoic teachings in an email and then he'll get them. So that Alkistis led me to, you know how I do a whole lot of work with writing with the Stoics and journaling with the Stoics. And one of the things that we do in my group in the Stoic Salon are these little challenges where we read some of the archaic, and I've even done it with the Greek, from the Greek, and then rewrite it, just like Marcus Aurelius did, this rewriting, this re-expressing, this reframing, make it yours in a way so it can like really strike your psyche. Because as Hadot says, it has to be such a strong hit to the psyche that it literally just transforms you. So I started rewriting them for my husband to grab his attention and to make it easy for him to, you know, and then that's how I started on this practice of copying and then rewriting in my Stoic Salon group. And then I presented at STOICON X in Athens when you were there on the meditations on meditations.
The best, the most enlivening, the most motivating. I loved your talk. I love your style.
I just loved that practice.
Practical, you own it, and that method that you have, that's so good what you're doing. And I really admire all of this, putting the whole STOICON X women together. Was that like your idea, or? That
was Donald's idea, actually. Donald said, hey, should we do a women's conference? And I'm like, yeah. And then, of course, he'd already spoken with Brittany about it.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to have been invited to help Brittany, you know, do it.
Great initiative.
So it's going to be really exciting, and I'm so glad that you're going to be leading us in a meditation. It's going to be really great.
It's an honor for me. Hey.
All right. Well,
do you have anything
what's
else?
One word of advice that you would give to someone? Because with the conference, we're also trying to reach out, and we don't know where, but we know that there are lots of women and everyone really interested in well-being and mindfulness, but maybe don't know about the Stoics. So if you were trying to sell Stoicism, or at least entice people who haven't heard of Stoicism, or maybe they have and they're a bit curious, what would be your Facebook ad? What would it say, for example?
Well, this is what I'm actually doing all the time, is I'm trying to promote Stoicism and bring it to people's attention, and trying to find ways to penetrate certain groups and speak in their language. My approach is always the reverse. It's not promoting Stoicism, because nobody wakes up and says, I got to learn more Stoicism. Everybody wakes up with their problem. They wake up in the middle of the night with their anxiety. So the way I do it is I speak to the fear and the anxiety, and I say, would you like to move from my motto is from fear to freedom, or from anxiety to freedom. Like, I'm always talking to people's problem. I'm not saying I come in with my theory or the Stoic theory. People are always, you have to start where they're preoccupied. They're preoccupied with their problem. So if we start speaking in the title, for example, of articles, not, what would Marcus Aurelius say? It's more like you're feeling stressed, you're feeling anxiety, it's the COVID, speaking to people's financial issues, mourning. What are their problems? Speaking to the problems, and then starting to describe their problem, and then going to, here's maybe a good solution. This has been working for 2,000 years. Want to try this? So it's reverse marketing. It's not like, here's Stoicism, here's Socrates. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Only academics care what Socrates said. I think it's first talking to the problem. So we have to, as teachers of Stoicism, as purveyors of Stoicism, we have to, at least I try always to speak to their problems.
Yeah.
That's how it is with my clients too. I mean, I'm not giving lessons in Stoicism. I'm doing therapy. I'm doing life coaching. So what are you dealing with? Divorce? Okay, let's talk about divorce. Let's go into your feelings about your divorce. What's upsetting you? Okay, now how can we process these feelings? Let's try the Stoic process. Let's try the Alkistis Method. Let's work through, here's a possible tool chest. I think Pigliucci calls it a toolbox, or so that's what I think we should do, and less intellectualizing. Look how great we are. We know what Marcus Aurelius said, and we know how to say it in Latin too. Nobody cares.
No one cares.
No.
And actually that's the Stoic approach, isn't it? I mean, Stoics addressed a problem and tried to solve it.
Address the problem, use our compassion for another person's problem. And of course the path of Socrates is questioning, asking questions, sincerely curious questions, like, and why do you say that, and do you think that's true? Like sincere questioning, curiosity for other people. That's how I think we can spread it more. They'll feel whether you're trying to teach them something and be teachy, or you're sincerely, as a human being to another, as we were saying in the beginning, you're my brother, you're my sister. I feel that you have pain. I feel your pain. This is what I've used in a similar circumstance. This has helped me. How can I help you? Like that. Not.
Alkistis, you just brought up a really interesting point, which I hadn't thought of. The Stoics are pretty teachy, though, aren't they? They're not really using that, am I wrong, the questioning kind of Socratic
if you look
technique?
in the Stoic groups, I think these people...
I mean, the ancients, though, even. Epictetus was more teachy.
Yeah, it is didactic. I mean, less didactic in the sense that they used a lot of maxims. They taught through kind of practice. But the Socratic way, the real path of philosophy is asking questions. And that's the way to extract the truth, right? The Behavioural method, the midwife method, where you're pulling it out of someone and they are generating the answers. You're provoking them to think for themselves. Critical questions, critical thinking, always with compassion, though. The love element has to be there, not like I know better than you. But I mean, everyone has their own style. I have, over the years, starting from someone who used to be more teachy, have started just to put questions in my, like really often. And question myself too. I'm like, hang on, why did you think that? Is that true? That's why my method is the 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it useful?
I love
What do
that.
you need to do to change? Are you willing to change? When would you be willing to give it up? You know, it just questions. It just prompts a different dynamism. Yeah, well, that's my way. I don't know.
I love that approach. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it useful? I think the Stoics do have a sense of reframing something to be helpful to you.
Helpful, practical.
Helpful,
All
yeah.
about practical
Yeah.
wisdom. It's one of the four
Yeah.
virtues.
Yeah.
It's philosophy
Yeah.
is a path of questioning. Okay, that's all. It's questioning, and that's the path of science too. Question, prove. And what I love with the Stoics is like they're like, we don't know it all. We want to, through the dialogue, exchanging logos, exchanging brains, exchanging reasoning methods, to let's find the truth together. It's like, let's get both perspectives and enrich and enlarge. So that's what I like about the Stoics. They know that they don't know. This is the Socratic way. I know that I don't know. I'm just asking. I'm questioning and I'm learning, So I like that, a modest approach.
I love that too.
I could spend all day with you.
I know. I was just thinking, like, before I let you go, can I just ask you one thing? I did want you to just share. Now, this podcast, I don't know who my audience is yet, but we'll soon find out. But for the listeners, what do you want to share? Where can we find you? What's your next project? What do you really want people to know about you at this point in your...
I'd like them to know about my book, From Fear to Freedom. Because that in the book, it says, encapsulates, it's a little like a workbook, and it's a self work. You can work through yourself, be your own therapist in a way. Just to tell them about my book, From Fear to Freedom, the 3 Golden Principles of Greek Philosophy for Self-Leadership.
I love that. I saw it on your website, and I'm going to share it on in the notes below. And From Fear to Freedom. I really like that.
This is the transformation you can have. This is because Epictetus is all about freedom. It's all about freedom. Self-leadership is that freedom to be your own. I bring up the image of the charioteer in my book, Plato's charioteer. You are the charioteer. And by the way, there were women charioteers as well, quite famous, who, they ran even in stadiums. Some won trophies as well. Anyway, so you're the charioteer, and you're governing these 2 horses, your pathos, and you have to begin to harness these horses. So I like that image. It's all in my book. Anyway, it's called From Fear to Freedom. I don't want to go on and on. But
I'm going to go and grab your book immediately after this podcast and study. I love it. I love the idea. Thank you so much for having a chat with me. It's always a pleasure. Hopefully we can chat again in person soon, like we did in Athens 2 years ago.
I'd love it. I would love that.
Yeah. Hopefully end of this year or next year. Yeah, it's bound to happen.
And any support I can also give, except for spreading the message of Stoicism, about STOICON, anything else I can assist in the organization, tell me. Yeah.
Oh, well. And I can't wait. June the 5th. And with you soon. So thank you so much, Alkistis. Thank you for being on this podcast. And on that note, I'm going to, end this recording.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you next time.
Bye. Bye.